My name is Jordan. I experienced medical gaslighting as a child. It started when I first got my period. I was around in fifth grade in elementary school, and my period. At first, it was really normal. It was normal. It lasted the normal amount of time. It wasn't too heavy, but it progressively got longer and heavier. Like the next period was like 2 weeks, and then the period after that was like a month long, and then over the course, as it kept progressing, it got to the point where I had a long and heavy continuous period over a year and a half. Just a year and a half of constant bleeding and constant pain. Around this time, my parents, we weren't on health insurance, so my parents saved up money to take me to the doctor. And the OBGYN I went to, she, she was like very dismissive of me, you know? She basically told me it was something that would turn out normal after a certain amount of time, and it would just to like she literally told me give it about a year, you know, and it was just very she was very dismissive of me, and she told me it wouldn't, like, it was just a normal period, you know, even though it had been going on for over a year at that point. So we went to a different doctor, and it was sort of a similar thing. The first doctor, I remember, she didn't order any tests. She didn't do any ultrasounds or anything on me. She just told me that it was just a normal period. The second doctor, at least, she took some blood samples and she did an ultrasound on me. And they didn't find anything wrong with me. She basically told me, we don't know what's wrong with you, and, you know, we don't know what to do. So she basically wrote me off. And that was the last time I saw her. And then after that, my period stopped. And it stopped for about a year. But throughout this whole time, it wasn't like, I felt horrible pain throughout this entire year. It felt like I was on my period, except I wasn't bleeding. So it was just horrible. And finally, when my period started again, it was bad to the point where I was passing out every day. And my parents finally took me to a third doctor, and this one finally listened to me. She actually talked to me. She did the same tests, and they were also normal, but she didn't give up on me, you know? She, instead of trying to cure me, she tried to treat my symptoms, and she put me on birth control pills. And I remember, just imagine like like a little 14-year-old taking birth control pills like this big, you know? They were crazy. But like after that, the periods got a little lighter, and it over the course of another year, they got a lot better. And that's basically how it got normalized for me. The first two doctors were the ones that didn't listen to me, and they were the ones that made me the first one really was the one that made me feel like what I was going through was normal, and what I was going through was almost my fault. The second doctor passed me off to the next one, and the third one was the best one. She didn't give up on me, and she listened to me, and she took me seriously, and that was the most important thing for me. The advice I would give to someone who's also experienced something like this: don't give up on yourself, and don't let anyone give up on you. And I'm lucky that my family took me seriously, and I'm lucky that I found a doctor who took me seriously. Don't give up on yourself and keep fighting, because if you know something's wrong with you, then you fight for it.
I'm Veronica Thaxton. I work in finance for a medical technology company. I've been a lifelong athlete and triathlete since 2000, and I just turned 50 and have been a victim of medical gaslighting since I was 48. The trouble that I had began about August 2021. And all of 2021, I've been training at a pretty high level, running and triathlons, and been an athlete most of my life and a triathlete since 2000. So I was in pretty good shape. I had a higher than normal training volume that year and felt pretty good. But at the beginning of August 2021, I started having some chest pain. It wasn't anything significant, nothing that really worried me, just left-sided sharp chest pain, shooting pain would come and go. So at first I didn't really notice it, and then I would have it every day. So I started noticing it more and thought, I'd better check in with my doctor. Made an appointment with my internist, who I've been seeing for several years now, and told him about my chest pain. And he knew me prior to being his patient. He's also a triathlete. And when I told him that I was having chest pain, he said, you're fine. You're an athlete, it's probably stress. He said, but we'll do an EKG, an X-ray, and a CT anyway, and just see what we find. So he did, and the results of all of those were fine. He didn't find anything. As an athlete, you think it's nutrition or hydration or sleep, or am I overtraining? So I kept going through that, but the chest pain got worse, and I would experience some, significant fatigue. Couldn't finish my workouts, and that wasn't normal for me. And then I went back to him towards the end of August. So after 3 or 4 weeks, went back to him, and I was having pressure on the left side of my chest that I'd never felt before. I couldn't explain it, but that with the pain started to worry me. And he still said, you're fine, but I could do less and less. And every day I could do less than the day before. And from August 25th to September 9th, I got to where I could barely walk, from training at a very high level for a half Ironman championship race to not being able to take a walk. I came home from a walk one day with significant chest pain. It felt like I was having a heart attack, just the typical left-sided chest pain down the arm, up the neck, shortness of breath. Called one of my best friends who's a nurse, and she said, go to the hospital. What are you doing? So I went to the ER, and they repeated the EKG, X-ray, and they did a CT. And with the CT, they said it was inconclusive for blockages. So I agreed to a heart cath. And with a heart cath, they said your arteries look good, but you have a myocardial bridge. And really the only explanation they gave to me was a myocardial bridge is where instead of the arteries lying on top of your heart, one of the arteries goes into the muscle. So there's a bridge of muscle covering that artery. But they said, we see this sometimes. It's not very common. It's rare, but it's benign. So that shouldn't be a cause of your symptoms. They kept me a couple days in the hospital, and really they couldn't answer my questions. And I said, well, if this is benign and I didn't have a heart attack and my arteries aren't clogged, what's wrong? And they couldn't say. I don't know. I saw several cardiologists in my few days there and several more doctors. No one could really explain it. They just sent me home on a calcium channel blocker. So I kept getting worse. I could do less and less. So my youngest daughter was a senior in high school, and I felt like I couldn't really be present. I felt like I was missing out. And so I thought, all right, I need a second opinion. So, of course, found another cardiologist who was supposed to be highly respected, highly credentialed, years of experience. And I went through a few months of follow-up with him and tests. And basically by the next April, he told me 3 things. He said, 1, you had some stuff going on. 2, you're getting better. And 3, it's in your head. So I kind of threw my hands up in the air, made an appointment with a congenital heart disease cardiologist because I thought he'll know about this congenital heart defect. If it's yes, it's the bridge, or no, it's in my head or something else. At first, he was listening to me, and then he started to sort of blow me off too, because he said, this is a specialist. It's a congenital heart defect. So this guy should know about it. And he's like, well, this is rare and it's probably not causing your symptoms, but we'll go ahead and do some testing anyway. So he did more testing. Again, I had more symptoms, and he said, all right, go to the ER. We'll order a CT and see what's going on. And after that CT, they realized that it was in fact the bridge. But he was skeptical. And I think that was more because he didn't know what to do with me. And, he at first didn't believe it was a bridge and said, these are benign, you shouldn't be symptomatic from it, something else is going on. And at that point, it was June 2022. So, I'm 10 months into this and finally getting a diagnosis. And after I got that diagnosis, I was able to send my records to the right place, specialized team at Stanford University, who is the world leader in this and knows how to treat it, knows how to diagnose it. And so I finally got some answers that I needed. And when I ended up at Stanford, the cardiologist response is, we get this all the time. We get patients from all over the world, and they're constantly being told it's anxiety or it's in your head. And so, I feel like I really suffered for a year and a half, but there are people who suffer for years and years and sometimes decades being told that it's anxiety or it's in your head. They're just not listened to or completely, disregarded. So I'm glad to finally have ended up there, but it also made me sad to hear that I was a typical story. The advice that I would give to anyone who feels like they're a victim of medical gaslighting is to get a second opinion. When you've asked your questions and you feel like you're not being taken seriously, if you haven't re-asked the questions, re-ask them, and if you're still not getting your questions answered or they're not listening to you, get a second opinion, get a third opinion, get as many opinions as it takes, but don't give up. Someone is going to listen to you, and just find someone who's going to take you seriously.